right. I think it's live. Oh, wow. Yes, definitely coming in. I'm gonna just make sure
We
that
are
we get
live
it.
now, yeah.
We
And
are live now.
we'll be removing Sanya's video to make the whole screen if I'm doing some demos that
Ah,
see some close up. Make sense?
yes, that makes sense.
No, just temporarily. Oh, okay. Otherwise, it's her, and then there's a little thing going on over here.
Very
Yeah.
tiny.
Check this out. We have Sanya, Mathura, Rich Motorsball. I'm Greg Christensen of CMMSRadio. We're at Rock
Ah,
2025. We've got Brian DSP. He's with Upkeep. He's manning all the cameras for us. But three of us are Upkeep ambassadors. So I just wanted to give a shout
all
out.
of
A big
us.
shout out to the live plan for this awesome conference. We all love it here. Rich, thank you for inviting me to be on Police Beef Live.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on it now.
Yeah, you have to pivot to Brian. I have that plugged in through my USB, so we'll get it going again
Later on.
Yeah, the bright green lights, the flashing, it's working. It's working good. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
about Greece,
I have one thing because I'm not getting it to come in on YouTube.
Sanya was saying she's not going to get to do what?
It's not coming in on YouTube, so I just want to make sure if Rich could
Nice.
just check that for me very quickly.
Check for YouTube.
Yeah, it has a check mark next to it.
It does?
Yeah, like it's running. It
Okay.
says you are live in YouTube. And I'll just
Okay.
put that on my screen here just real quick.
Because it's not, I'm getting it on LinkedIn for sure. It works on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
It's,
it's there. You just may have the wrong link or
I may
something.
have a wrong link.
So real
Let me
quick,
check.
let me send that over
Ah,
to you.
okay. I got it. It's
You
coming
now
in
have
now.
it now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Then I'll go
We are
back
good
to
to
the
go.
StreamYard here. So we're good?
We are good to go. Definitely. We have so many links involved.
I'm trying to learn about Greece Steve because I don't know like this stuff. I know how important it is. I know that lubrication, various grease, it's really important to identify as soon as possible. Contaminants, air can be a culprit. There's a lot of situations where you have bearings that have such a tight clearance. Any minute degree where I just continue that is going to disrupt any sensitive item you might have with that. And for a piece of equipment that are rotating bearings that need proper, high quality, consistent communication. Yeah, the general idea is that we can actually use this to find out how things go.
If we have an issue with the grease at that particular location, it could be a bearing, it could be a gear system, whatever it is. But if we can sample that, have a reliable sample that's representative, we can look in 4 different areas. So we say that the grease thief and the analysis gives us the chance to see where consistency changes. That's a little bit unique for grease because that's not a factor in oil. We have viscosity, right? But with grease, it's consistency. So you get wear, consistency, contamination, which you were just talking about, right? The particles, the glitter that gets in there, and so forth. And then finally, the oxidation condition of that grease. Because the most of our greases are going to be formulated with antioxidants, and that's going to help them live a long life. But they're going to deplete over time. And so we may have some drivers for performing grease analysis. CMMS system kicks out a PM for lubrication, right? It says grease this on, let's say, every 3-month period. What's the basis for that? How is that developed? How do we come about to say that's the ideal time to replenish greases? The ideal time is really when the grease is no longer performing the function as it did when it was new. What we mean by that is there excessive wear forming as evidence that the grease is not protecting those surfaces? Are there contaminants building up in that grease raceway where the gears are interfacing that are going to cause abnormal wear? Has the consistency changed so that the grease has become runny? It's actually leaking away from that area, or it's become so hard it no longer can slump into the bearing as it's whizzing by to continue to feed that lubricant there. And then finally, is it the end of its life where those antioxidants have dropped off and we're going to see rapid oxidation and degradation?
So is it fair to say that in a situation where that PM preventive maintenance particularly comes out, technicians about to perform this item, that's the opportune time to incorporate grease because we have that availability to access the grease and say, what are these various four metrics that we're going to look at? What do they look like now before I'm about to make this change?
Right, because we're resetting the clock at that point, right? The grease has been aging. And this is something that's really different between greases and oils. And that is how wear products behave, wear particles. So if you think about oil, you might have a large reservoir and maybe some settling areas in that reservoir. You maybe have a filter. All these things are going to be continuously removing wear particles as they are being created. So they kind of hit this equilibrium. And we look for that equilibrium to change and increase as a sign of oils that the wear condition is degraded. In greases, we don't get that. Grease is going to hold the particles that were created from the first revolution. So you have a cumulative representation of the wear over that entire period. Your example is 3 months in that CMMS BPM workload. At the end of 3 months, if that's our current practice, we want to evaluate and says, is that right? Should it be 3 months? Should it be 1 month?
And that creates an opportunity for PM optimization in those practices for your plan, right?
That's right. That's right. So right now, I like to bring toys into the Chinook, right? So that's my Chinook model. It's a great example of where we've been able to use grease analysis to optimize lubrication.
Yeah.
So that's one spot. You're pointing to the swash plate area, which is a critical part of that helicopter, really any helicopter. And it's greased. There's a greased bearing in that location. You've got the landing gear is another location.
Here's and the hubs.
That's correct. You also have you can see the engines there on the side. This has, I think it's 4,000 plus horsepower engines powering this thing. And then you're going to have hanger bearings for those drive shafts. And then you're going to have spines for the drive shafts where they connect. Right, so you have all these locations on board. And so we did work with Boeing, the manufacturer, saying this was designed originally in 1962. So we have 60 years of operation. Are we doing the right periodicity for greasing? Because a lot of times grease is a knee-jerk reaction, right? Something happens, it's like, why'd that happen? You don't know. Let's grease more often so it doesn't happen again. Kind of blindly adjusting those frequencies. If we don't have data that tells us otherwise, it's hard to deviate from that. So they both said, let's get the data. Let's sample and test the greases, and let's compare that to the existing PMs that we are recommending for the operators of that vehicle. That's what this is going to do. That's right. And we actually created a new kit that didn't exist. It's the helicopter grease sampling. And it had to be designed in a certain way because some of those lines are very, very small teeth. We have to be able to get in there as they're doing their inspection, disassembly inspection, which is part of the PMs that they do. And then they have to drag the grease out from the surface of those teeth. And the total grease you get is very small. So we have to really quantitatively transfer that to the grease feed, which is going to do that analysis. So yes, we developed a new kit that's in a position to take those representatives.
All this stuff, when I think about it, and although I don't know everything about it, I know who to call. Right? Call and has some other things that supplement that. But apparently, what I learned in the last 2 to 3 years.
Also, Brian, Greg his volume is a little bit low. So I need him just to speak up a little bit.
So
You're just speak up louder.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
things I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years is that lubrication is an opportunity to almost immediately make an impact in your maintenance and reliability program. Yeah. And a lot of the reason I think that might be overlooked is one, lack of education, two, lack of willingness to integrate that into what we're already doing. So doing what we do, which we don't really that. On top of that, there's this practice that if I look back even in my people that we feel we add without understanding what's already in there.
Yeah.
And we actually perpetuate that contamination, right? It's a new grease oil, not it's a new seems
And there may be issues with incompatibility between different grease products. You know, that's another thing that we look at for sure. So if you're never sampling and analyzing your greases, you're flying blind. I'll go to flying as our example because we just were talking about the Chinook helicopter. You're flying blind if you don't have data that tells you am I optimized. That's what this is. In fact, Boeing called this program LOS, Lubrication Optimization Study. They're going to say, hey, since 1962, we've been lubricating these things. Have you been doing it right? Or have we just been super conservative so that we just don't want to see anything go wrong? It got to the point where we started this project, every 50 flight hours, they were going into maintenance to replace the grease on those planes. So think about this asset in the field. 50 hours later, you're back and doing maintenance again. We did this and did the analysis. This was from Chinooks all over the world. It was the U.S. Army, it was the National Guard, but it was also the Canadians, the Canadian Air Force, the U.K. Squadron, and the Royal Dutch Air Force as well. All participated, and they deployed a lot of settings, Arctic settings, somewhere in the desert, you know, all these different conditions. So we're able to look at a combination of operating conditions, say what is that minimum required interval to get to the end of the life of the race. Those 50 hours ended up being 200 hours in testing. So what they did is they said, well, maybe we're not super confident to go all the way to 200 right off to the end of the cliff. We're going to bump it out to 120. That more than doubled the availability of this in the field. And check this out. Boeing came back and said, when you take this new recommendation of replenishment frequencies across the fleet, the 1,000 plus helicopters across the world, it's going to save $100 million per year.
that, like when I talk about maintenance, CMMS, regardless, is part of that basic foundational goal you want trying to achieve. Reliability is about availability.
Yeah.
So that is massively back on the table, which I was kind of saying here. That's this opportunity that's often overlooked.
Yeah, just think about from an operational perspective, they now have the equivalent to more than twice as many helicopters as were there before because of that availability. Plus, in times when your budgets are being scrutinized and support, who's doing this work? If how much labor hours are available to do it, so you just reduce labor hour components per significantly. And at the same time, you're increasing the flight safety of this asset.
I have a question about the technology system.
Yeah, sure.
What is the barrier to entry when it comes to this idea around cost? Not price shopping, but it's a barrier to entry fairly low.
Yeah, so for quite a while, it's been, it's high definitely compared to the cost of an oil sample model, which is a nickel or something, or it's free. It's worked into the price of the analysis, and then we do have a price component with the grease because the grease thief. I'll grab a couple of them here. Show you. This is what the Type 1 grease thief. And what you find is that red piston in there, you've got a clear plastic body, and then you have a handle. It looks fairly simple in design, but there is a tiny lip on that piston that creates a sewage for that grease. And what that means is that I can now take this. You know what size the thread head is? I know. That's an 8-inch NPT. The large majority of electric motors, that's the size of the plug. On the exit area.
Oh,
Still, you can thread that right
Brian,
into the
Yes.
wait for the excess to come out and push that piston.
Can't hear them?
their volume is dropping a little bit, and
Okay.
I'm wondering if we can go full screen with them.
Full screen with them. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
which may have to help you out with that one,
Let's see.
because I think we could get them a little bit bigger.
Okay.
than that.
Rich is here, and also it's getting more crowded in here, so the noise level is also rising.
I don't know if it's going to go full screen. Here you can see, but yeah. Here's the system. This is the handle. This is where you can screw it in, and then it's got that plunger system, and you're fully sealed. So when you draw out, you don't introduce extra contaminant. You're getting a pure sample.
Yeah, and what I'll say about that is this is not designed like a syringe with a vacuum to hold the sample. This grease doesn't really flow. Instead, it's there so when you're adding the new grease, remember we talked about that? The opportunity to analyze is when the new grease is coming in. It's pushing the old grease out that pushes that piston. And I don't know if you noticed this or not, Greg, but there's little holes at the bottom, right? So these little holes are purge holes. There's one there. There's one there on the other side. When this piston back seats, now you've got excess grease that can flow out. What's happening is the most recent grease from the valve, uncontaminated by the surroundings, and you're ready to eat gas.
And by doing that, you're eliminating guesswork.
Yeah. What really tells us about sex? And so again, that example was this is a 3-month PM or CMMS. You're going to be able to analyze and say that's ideal because that grease was at the end of its cycle. Wait a minute, we accumulating contaminants. We actually need to be greasing to protect that barrier. Or everything's fine and it's got 2 times antioxidant left, so we could go to 6 months or whatever it is. But you have a database decision feeding into that maintenance work order scheduling.
Yeah, and that's more of a dialed-in program. What's going to be talking about? Yes, that's a. For me, I think of it as an easy way to kind of level up and continue to buy. Now, here's this outline. One side.
You asked a good question, which is around cost, right? So there is a cost. I said this is a complex device. It also is in the analysis process. It allows us to squeeze that grease out through as a chemical to measure the consistency change. But it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $6-7 $8 for it, and that's a lot more than zero. So we've also are working for those more price sensitive applications where it's like, look, I just want to get a sample. I want to be able to do a quick and easy test, maybe just looking at bare metals, and then I'm done, right? So it's hard to justify the more precise and capable units. So we develop. So this is the grease feed. This is called the pickpocket. Okay. So the pickpocket is a small tube, but they're kind of a similar setup where you've got pistons going on there, and you have a chamber that's going to hold it in. It's a smaller one, and it actually slides right in the end. Okay. So if you have a smaller diameter opening, this is going to get hung up. This one's going to fit right in there. Now, that's what this tubing is in your leg. This is the pickpocket function. This is a recent development. Now, one of the things that you're scheduling here is that you have another thing you go to next, right? So let's keep an eye on that because I want to inspect it top. But here is the example of where we're going to go into the machine. This one's threading this. Now we want to actively go into the machine where that bearing's moving and take that sample. So now we have an opening and we go in until we hit the outside of the machine and set the depth. And then if we're not sucking, we're actually pouring forward. So we move that forward to pour that sample. Now we have that grease packet in that area. It's another fitted piston that keeps it from sucking back out and people draw it. And it's over. Here's our container. Put it in, pop. You've got your sample. You've got a gram and a half of grease. And you can do all the testing up to 11 and that's going to be a less expensive way of getting that sample. So maybe that's the way you'll do it. Maybe Instead, you'll have just a surface, like a pillow block here, like this kit here. So that's your pillow block kit. And you see in there, in that sealed container, it has that long spatula, that straw-like spatula. Go ahead and pull that out, Greg. Little Ziploc on there. We give you all the tools that you need to take a good sample and keep it clean.
Here's the spatula.
Yep. So this comes along with this device, which is called the GT filler. That's our grease filler. Okay. So say it's a bearing, it's a surface bearing here. You're going to walk away with one of these, right? You'll see these before my little demo unit. But that's the, let's just call this our bearing for now. How am I going to sample that? Well, maybe I'm going to take this wide end of the spatula. I'm going to take old grease that's contaminated, wipe it out of the way. I flip it over. And now I'm getting the grease that just exited, which is representative of what's going on here. I pull this piston out, and now I have inside a little cavity that I can fill. As I'm grabbing that grease, I get this to just less than full, and it has a plunger that follows it. That goes in, well, if I'm pulling right out, then that would be the grease engine at that point. And that's going to transfer that grease into this device, and there you've got your sample ready. So there's a number of ways to do it. Your question about cost is a good one, and we're working for different locations for those based off the application and what kind of testing they want to do here.
Yeah, and obviously, I don't know if I'm right about that, but criticality plays a role in what drives your humidity willingness and why you actually make this investment.
Correct.
Or creating that longevity, that availability, and dialing in or optimizing the feature related to the lubrication or grease in particular. Yeah, I want to know about that.
Yeah, let's keep showing stuff for folks here, right? So in this example where we fill this bugger up, okay, it did the other end. So let me just transfer it over this. But this is full of grease. The grease is going to push this piston back, and it's going to be sitting there. And then this whole cavity is filled with grease, right? So what this device does is it allows me to take that full chamber of grease, drop it into this body, and look, this is the same body you were just handling on the grease thief, which is threaded, that was it, threaded onto this extrusion die. And it has a slot. You see that slot there at the end, right? So notice there's a little cutout here, and I slide that into place, and it snaps into place. Now what I can do is I can manually push that down. The grease is going to come in there, and then I'm going to capture that on this in substrate. So I'm going to have that gram of grease spread out a millimeter thick, and it's going to be 6-7 inches long. I can take those areas and do multiple. That's how we start with such a small quantity, yet we can do all of these different tests that tell us everything we need to know about this.
Do we do our testing in real time, or do we send it?
Yes, either is an option. This device is meant to be field portable, and we have 3 devices that are field portable for this kind of pocket lab configuration. One is across the way here at Hamsatun Systems. It's the furrow cube. And you can drop these right into that, and it has a foil. It's going to measure the first content of each cube. So that's a great first test. And the second test could be here where we're extruding this out. And we get that feedback of comparing the new grease to the grease sample that we took. Is it the same level of force required in extruding? Is it soft and runny? Has it hardened up? And then the third piece, it's over there on the other table, is our colorimeter. So we actually have a device very similar to this that'll take a little dab of that grease, flatten it out on a spectrometer window, and tell you how much it has changed from the new grease cut.
You really can do all of this potentially in the field, other than whether you have this other technology.
Yeah, no, that's a very portable 12-volt battery technology as well. All 3 of these components are field portable. You take it where you want to do that testing.
So if you're on land subdivision, a bunch of oil rigs, or maybe you're on large, I don't even know how big these are, the mining situation, where you've got big, heavy equipment, areas like this, you don't have to go run back and forth here and there. You can do your work where you're doing your work.
Well, yeah, great. So, like wind turbines, right? Yeah. Guys drive out to a wind farm, there might be 30, 50, 100 wind turbines there. You bring this along, you're up, you're down, the samples are there. While you're there, you have the results and you know what actually is happening.
Awesome. So for me, this is awesome to learn about because we haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah.
We've tried for a long time to coordinate so we could be on CMMSRadio. Rich is always running around, traveling the world, teaching people about this, getting learning sessions, workshops, all those things. I'm a huge fan of Grease Thief. I'm a huge fan of you. Thank you for having me on.
Right.
Grease Thief Live from Reliable Plant 2025 out here in Chicago. Rich, Sean.
Thank you. Thanks, buddy. All right. That was fun. Say that's a wrap.
Bye, Sanya.
Bye, Sanya. Thanks for your help.
Bye, Sanya.